We live in a time where almost everyone owns a camera that can produce nearly professional images. Plus, we all have this camera with us almost all of the time. And of course, I'm talking about smartphones. And still, I often get asked which camera I would recommend if someone wants to take their photography to the next level. The answer is pretty straightforward at first. Get a camera with the interchangeable lens system and a large sensor. However, newer entry-level cameras like the Sony a6700 for example can cost you up to $1,500 when you include a decent lens. Which isn't exactly cheap if you're starting out a new hobby. Obviously, not everyone wants or can spend thousands of dollars right away. In this video, I will tell you how to dive into the world of photography as cheaply as possible. So, let's get started. A few weeks ago, a friend asked me more or less the question we just discussed. He was looking for a good camera that could take significantly better pictures than a smartphone, and I listed him the usual suspects. And when he looked up the prices, he was visibly shocked. And when I asked about his budget, I got a surprising answer. He said to me, I have $200. My initial reaction was that with such a low budget, he should probably stick with a smartphone. Because you know, the image quality of a modern smartphone, especially with all the software enhancements, surpass any point-and-shoot camera you can get for $200. And honestly, that was truly a disappointing answer for both of us. And the question has stuck with me ever since. So, is it possible to get a camera system with a body and a lens for just $200 that is decent to work with and can produce really good, if not professional looking images? And can surpass even the most modern smartphones? And I think I finally found a solution to that problem. So let me introduce to you the Canon EOS 5D Mark I or 5D Classic. This camera is, or rather was, a professional model from Canon featuring a full-frame sensor which is notably larger than the APS-C size sensors you will find on most newer entry-level cameras. I remember when I first started out in photography over 10 years ago, the Canon 5D series was always considered top-of-the-line dream cameras. And the best part, you can now find this model as cheap as $140 to $160, if you're a bit lucky and a bit patient in your search. Of course, this camera has full manual adjustments, no need to mention that really, and it uses the older Canon EF mount. Canon has since moved on to the Canon RF mount for their lineup of mirrorless cameras, but the good news is that there is a vast selection of EF mount lenses available on the used market. In fact, no other mount offers as many lenses as the Canon EF mount. Given the super low budget, you will most likely want to look at older used lenses, so that should not be a problem and is rather a feature than a failure for me. But let's be honest now. There is a major consideration we cannot ignore: the age of the camera. This model first hit the market back in 2005, so it's been around for a staggering 19 years. Most people might assume now that with a camera that's almost 2 decades old, you cannot get great photos anymore. But that's not true at all basically. There are definitely some trade-offs with older models like this. For example, low light performance and the handling of higher ISO settings can be a bit problematic. Many users have reported that noticeable noise starts to appear in the images once you push the ISO beyond 800. So, while it is true that you might encounter more noise in low-light situations, it doesn't mean that the camera can't still produce impressive photos. Additionally, many people are surprised by the camera's astonishing good battery life. While the resolution is only around 13 megapixels, definitely not top of the line by today's standards, it's actually more than sufficient enough for like 99% of people and their photography. And lower megapixel counts can also give you an advantage, as the file sizes will be much smaller compared to those from a modern 60 megapixel camera for example. You also won't get any modern autofocus system with this camera model, as it only has exactly 9 autofocus points, which is pretty basic. However, despite these limitations, this camera can still produce some really impressive images. I'll go ahead now and show you a few examples so you can decide for yourself. And here's a quick disclaimer, these are not my pictures, I took them off the internet from stock sites and I will leave you a link below. Not bad for such an old camera, right? In fact, I just tricked you a little bit here. I sneaked in a photo that was actually taken with a Sony A9 Mark III camera, which is a brand new 2024 high-end professional camera. And at the end of the video, I will let you know which of these photos was taken with it. If you want, you can take a guess and drop it in the comments below. Although this comparison might not be entirely fair or meaningful, I believe it still effectively addresses my point here. The huge selection of lenses also opens up a fantastic possibility in expanding your photography. This brings us up to the next topic, lenses. Because a camera body on its own without a lens doesn't do much for you. If you're just starting out with photography, I'd recommend investing in a prime lens with a good wide aperture as your first lens. For instance, a lens with an aperture of 1.8 offers several benefits. It provides a stunning background blur, or bokeh, which is often associated with professional looking photos. This effect is something that many people immediately think of when they hear the term professional camera. Additionally, a wide aperture helps to mitigate the camera's less impressive performance in low light conditions. Plus, prime lenses are generally much more affordable compared to zoom lenses. A great example for a prime lens is the good old Canon EF 50mm 1.8. It's a classic choice that offers excellent and really unmatched value for its price. You can often find this lens for around $60 if you're lucky. In my case, I found one for $69 on MPB. Even more than a decade ago, when I first started out in photography, the 50mm f1.8 was the lens I relied on the most. And many people do this still today, and there's a really good reason for that. As I said, it's tough to find a lens that offers better value for money than this one. And if you're willing to spend a bit more, you might also want to look into the Canon 50mm f1.4. It has a significantly wider aperture, which can give you even better low light performance and more pronounced background blur. But keep in mind, these are just a couple of examples. The range of lenses available for the Canon EF mount is massive, and many of them can be found at great prices on the used market. For example, you could choose a 35mm prime lens or a 85mm prime lens, or you might consider one of the older Canon L lenses. The L lenses were, and still are, the high-end professional lineup from Canon and are known for their quality. In fact, I used some of them back in the day when I shot with Canon cameras myself, and I was super satisfied with the performance of it. So, what should you be cautious about when thinking about buying an old Canon 5D Mark I or 5D Classic? Since the Canon 5D Mark I is quite an old model, it's somewhat important to be careful about where you buy it from. I personally recommend sticking with a certified dealer like MPB, where I found the camera I showed you in the screenshot early on in this video. They do a checkup of the camera before selling it to you and make sure that everything is working as it should. There are definitely other good options out there for buying used cameras, but the advantage of going with a shop that is specified in selling used camera is, as I said, that they ensure the camera is working. Private eBay sellers, for example, might not do that so thoroughly. For example, I heard reports that the 5D Mark I models have shutter issues, which isn't surprising after nearly 20 years of usage. If you're seriously considering buying one, it's a good idea to do some additional research. You might want to check out reviews here on YouTube or get more information from photography forums, for example. This will ensure that you are getting a camera that is worth the money. It's also worth mentioning that similar great deals might be available with older cameras from Nikon or other brands. So let's recap. In my example, you could get a Canon EOS 5D Mark I along with a 50mm f1.8 lens for around $230. This is a bit over the original $200 budget we discussed, but I think it's a solid choice. With this setup, you are getting a really impressive package. Despite its age, the Canon EOS 5D Mark I is surprisingly versatile and user-friendly. You won't notice its age too much, especially in good lighting conditions where it performs almost on par with modern cameras that will cost you at least 10 times as much. And to me, the ease of use combined with a good performance is really important, especially for beginners. Some older cameras can be a bit tricky to operate and are more suited to enthusiasts who appreciate that sort of challenge. For example, me personally, I enjoy shooting with old vintage analog cameras, like... ich muss natürlich auch eine Kamera haben. Oh, fuck. For example, me personally, I enjoy shooting with old vintage analog cameras, like this one here, but Cameras like this offers you a completely different kind of photography experience. Of course, those vintage analog cameras are not really suitable for everyday use anymore. When I think about it, that could be a topic for another video. So if you watched this far, thank you first, but let me know if you would like to know more about that. I really hope you found this video somewhat useful and that it helped you in some way or another to make a decision. If you made it this far in the video, a big thank you for watching. And before the video ends, I just want to mention a photographer and YouTuber called Benj Heish, who gave me a big part of my inspiration for this video. I will link his video below. But for now, that's it. And I have plenty of other videos on photography over on my channel, so feel free to come back and check them out wherever you like. For now, I hope you have an amazing day and I look forward to seeing you again in one of my next videos. Thank you very much and goodbye.